Are you ready for a pixie book? Come on and listen in. With stories full of wonder, it's time now to begin. Hello, children. Oh, and hello to you, storybook. Ah, yes. Children, did you ever feel so hungry you could eat a house? Well, today's story is about a brother and a sister who did eat a house. Well, parts of it anyway. It's called Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there was a boy and a girl named Hansel and Gretel, who lived in a secluded forest with their father. The father had always looked after them, hunting and gathering food for them to eat and keeping the fire burning on cold nights. But one day, he became so sick he couldn't even leave his bed. Soon, there was no food left to eat and very little wood to burn. Hansel and Gretel were still very young, so their father didn't allow them to go into the forest by themselves for fear they would get lost. But they knew they had no choice but to go and find some food and wood for the fire. So, one morning, when the father was still asleep, Hansel and Gretel quietly got dressed. They each took one piece of bread for their journey, leaving the last piece for their sick father, and they set out into the forest. Gretel was afraid they might get lost and never find their way back to the cottage. "Don't worry, little sister," Hansel said, "for I have a brilliant plan." He showed her how he was crumbling his piece of bread and dropping little pieces to the ground so that they could follow the breadcrumbs back home at the end of the day. They continued on their way, going deeper into the forest. At times, they chased after rabbits and tried catching ducks, but they could never catch them, and by the end of the day, they were very tired and hungry, and all they had gathered were a few small berries. Night was falling, and Gretel thought that now they would surely get lost. Hansel laughed and said, "Don't forget about my brilliant breadcrumb plan." However, now that the moon had risen, they could see that a flock of wild birds had eaten all the breadcrumbs. Now they were truly lost. Gretel, who was very upset, said, "Oh, I thought your plan was supposed to be brilliant, Hansel." "Well, I never said it was brilliant," said Hansel. "I just said that it was a plan." But we all know exactly what he said. So, hungry and tired, they just kept walking aimlessly in the darkness. But then they reached a clearing and they saw a strange little house that seemed to be made of, well, food. Its walls were gingerbread, its windows were clear sugar, and its roof was covered with cakes and candies and chocolates of every kind. They ran to the house and started breaking off little pieces to eat. And it was very tasty indeed. "Try the roof!" "Oh," cried Hansel. "Oh, it's delicious!" "This is clearly the best window I've ever had," cried Gretel. "This wall is the best," said Hansel. But both stopped eating when they heard a voice from the doorway. "Nibble, nibble, nibble, gnaw. I hear the clanking of a jaw or two. Who is nibbling at my little house? Is it a bear or a fox, a rabbit or a mouse, or two?" Hansel nervously answered, "No, it's the wind." Then they saw little old ladies standing at the open door. "Oh, it's just two harmless little children," she said. "Oh, You must be very hungry if you're eating pieces of my house. Then the old lady asked them to come inside for some proper food and a rest. So Hansel and Gretel went inside the house, and the little old lady fed them milk and pancakes with sugar and apples and nuts, as much as they could eat. Afterwards, they lay down in 2 little beds and fell into a deep sleep and dreamt happy dreams. But when Gretel woke up in the morning, she saw her poor brother off in a corner, locked in a cage. And when she looked at the old lady, she saw in the light of day that she was bent over with razor-sharp teeth and blood-red eyes. Why, you're not a nice little old lady at all, Gretel said. You're a witch. Yes, I am a witch, she cackled. Then she explained that she built the house out of gingerbread and cakes and candies so she could catch hungry little children just like them. She said she planned to keep Hansel in the cage and, with Gretel's help, feed him all of his favorite foods until he was nicely round and plump. Now that's a brilliant plan, said Hansel. Then I will cook him and eat him, said the witch. That part I don't like so much, said Hansel. Gretel frowned and slowly shook her head. Over the next few days, Gretel had no choice but to help the witch prepare and feed Hansel all of his favorite foods to fatten him up for the fire. Hansel, Gretel whispered through the bars of the cage, we have to do something before she eats you, and then me. Don't worry, little sister, Hansel said with his mouth full. I'll come up with a brilliant plan. But first, pass me some more pancakes and chocolate sauce, please. Soon, Hansel was quite plump and round, and the witch started a fire in the big iron oven. The witch opened the big iron door and told Gretel to step inside and check if the oven was hot enough. But Gretel knew that the witch would just shut the door on her when she entered and eat her too. I don't think it's big enough, Gretel said. I don't think I could even fit through the door. No, you're just as silly as your brother, said the witch. The door is big enough. Just look, I can get in myself. And she crept over and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a big push. The witch fell into the oven, and Gretel slammed the iron door shut and fastened the bolt. Then, as the witch screamed from inside the burning oven, Gretel ran to the cage and freed her brother. Hansel, we're saved, she said as they embraced. Oh, I told you I had a plan, said Hansel. What plan? Said Gretel. Then, because they no longer had to fear the witch, they looked around her house and found boxes full of pearls and jewels. They knew that with such a fortune, they and their father would never go hungry again. They stuffed their pockets and left the witch's house. Gretel, who I think we can all agree was truly the brilliant one, followed the movement of the sun and the stars, and after a day and a night, they found their way back home. They rushed into the house and into the arms of their father. Oh, Gretel, he cried. Oh, I feared I would never see you again. Then he looked at Hansel. Oh, and who is this round little boy? The father said. It's me, Father, Hansel, Hansel said. Hansel, said the father, it looks as though you've been, eating well. All part of the plan, Father, all part of the plan. Gretel just smiled and shook her head. The end. Oh, I just love happy endings. See you next time.
Did you like the story? Then click like.